The fourth attempt to bring Hellboy to the big screen seems to be dead on arrival. But does the movie actually deserve that? Let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we're going to be reviewing Hellboy Crooked Man. But before we get into that, we're here to give you movie recommendations. So, guys, what's the best recent thing we've seen?
So I watched Blink twice, which I don't know if any of you guys have seen.
Yeah, I watched that.
Came out recently. To try and not give any spoilers away, because it's quite a very straightforward story in terms of sort of kind of like what happens. So it's quite difficult to try and explain. But it's very much a tech billionaire meets a group of women at this kind of like sort of gala event, and then he invites them out to his private island, and from there kind of like weird things start happening, and then it ultimately becomes a movie of her trying to survive this island. Like Jonathan, I don't know if like I can even say any more than that without kind of like giving away kind of like what's going on and sort of know the kind of like the sort of know the truth behind sort of know everything that's going on there. But it's horror, isn't it? I think that kind of falls under the horror genre. Either way, it was a very good watch. Got like good characters in there, interesting kind of like character dynamics, and it just kind of serves up what you would expect from the type of movie. So that's my recommendation.
I watched a film called Girls of the Sun. It's a French war drama film, pretty much. Women soldiers go against extremists in, I think it was like in a Kurdish town. It was like in a Kurdish town, and pretty much, yeah. So they go up against them, and one of the main actresses, she tries to retrieve her son as well because he was held hostage by them too. So I'm pretty sure he's going to become a child soldier.
Is it based on real events?
I don't know if it's based on real events. I never checked.
It sounds like the war against Islamic State.
I think it is based on real events. Hold on, let me quickly. Yeah, it is. It's based on the truth. Yeah, it is. So yeah, it was a really good story. Because there's a notable actor in her. I forgot her name, but she was in a few movies which I liked. She was in a series called Invasion, I think, and then she was in Extraction 2. But she was the main actress, Baha, in the film. So yeah, man, The Girls of the Sun, I definitely recommend that one if anyone hasn't seen that.
Did it feel like real history, or is it very stylized or idealized? Or
I'd say it was stylized, but not to the point where it was unrealistic. Like we were watching, like I can imagine it'd be similar to what's going on now, to what I'm seeing in the film.
So my best thing I watched this week is season 1 of Boardwalk Empire, which is a 2010 HBO historical drama about the Prohibition era, where it's set in Atlantic City, where Prohibition has just come into effect, and it's essentially about the rich and powerful of that town essentially trying to put in place like alcohol smuggling in order to keep their businesses going, and all the money and power and corruption and violence that comes with that. Like one of the characters is Al Capone, and so like it's about organized crime trying to get in on that, and it touches on all the political and cultural aspects of that time frame. And it's kind of taking this HBO tapestry approach, where you have a whole bunch of different characters who all have their own stories going on, but they add up to kind of a bigger picture of a larger narrative that's moving forward. So there's 6 seasons of it, and so I've only seen the first season, and so far it's excellent, and like the characters are good. It flows well. It's interesting. It feels historically accurate as far as I could tell. So yeah, all around a good watch.
Time to get to the main event.
So Hellboy, the Crooked Man. So this is an adaptation of a comic in which Hellboy, who is this demon character who came to Earth in the 40s and now works for the US government as kind of a paranormal investigator and monster hunter. And it's 1959, and he ends up stranded in Appalachia in a town or a region that is plagued by witches. And he kind of stumbles into that situation and kind of tries to help the people defend themselves and kind of get to the bottom of it. And a part of that is confronting the leader of the witches, who is the Crooked Man. And the story kind of goes from there. So what did we think of Hellboy, the Crooked Man?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough. I'm actually kind of upset that it didn't have a wider release. I like, from watching the movie, I can understand why it had like a little bit of a limited release, because it's definitely quite weird and wonderful in many places in the movie. Overall, I really like Jack Kesy as Hellboy in this. Actually, my favorite kind of like depiction of Hellboy, point blank, so far. He was like kind of like great in all like his like mannerisms, and like I actually quite like the serious tone of it. Yeah, I really liked him. I like the kind of like simplistic story of it as well. I liked how like weird and creative they got with sort of kind of like what they were doing in this, and like how they like approached sort of like the witches and stuff. And it definitely kept me on my toes in terms of like how like creepy and like how like sort of weird some of the stuff got. The story itself was cool. Like it was like serviceable. I feel like the story was like serviceable. I didn't have like too many like kind of like complaints about the story in this and everything kind of like made sense to me. Everything was like kind of like okay, kind of followed along well. One of the complaints I have is that I kind of wish it just had a bigger budget, because I feel like this could have been something really good if it had like a bigger budget and it had like more kind of like money pushed behind it. But I think for what we got, for like the low budget movie that we got, I feel like it was like they made the most of sort of what they had.
For me, it felt like a WTF moment, well, a moment which lasted 1 hour and 40 minutes. I felt kind of discombobulated watching this movie, and strange enough, you would associate that word with like a negative connotation, but I don't mean that in a bad way whatsoever. Like it felt refreshing watching it, because it felt like like how they said, a more serious tone Hellboy, and I enjoy serious tone movies. Like with like when Hellboy was first introduced to me, I thought it was gonna be like a serious film, like similar to like Ghost Rider, right? But obviously it was like Hellboy was very comedic, so I didn't know at first how I felt. But like even though I did end up enjoying like the first Hellboy, but I didn't know initially how my initial reaction. I didn't know how I was gonna feel about it, because I said, oh, I don't know why. Like serious characters like Hellboy, like this guy's pretty much looks like the freaking devil. So serious characters, I always feel like I don't like them to be tampered with a bit of comedy, right? But it ended up like the first Hellboy, I enjoyed it. This one, I enjoyed the serious tone to it. Like it was very like Harvey says as well. Like I enjoyed the actor who played this character. Like he did an amazing job. I just felt very kind of like, firstly, it looked like it felt like a Tubi film mixed with Lionsgate. I don't know if anyone knows what Tubi is, but it's a streaming service. And if you know what Tubi movies are known for, then you'll know that they're like known for like low budget. Like not all of their movies are bad, but a majority of them are questionable. Well, yeah, so it felt like watching a Tubi mixed with a Lionsgate movie. And like for mixed reasons, like first, like of course, the budget, you could tell it's like a shoestring budget, which I didn't know, because it says it was 20 million, but I thought that's quite like kind of a lot. But I don't know what the previous projects, how much their budget was, but still. But yeah, like there were parts where it was really like I could see what they were doing. I was like, yeah, I like it, even though it was like very demonic. But at the same time, it's Hellboy, so it kind of fell in line. It was just, this didn't feel like I was watching a Hellboy movie. That's the point. Like it felt like.
And you say that because your reference point is the Del Toro movies, which we watched just a month ago or so. Not because you've read the comics, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So it felt like I was introduced to a whole new story, and I was just rewatching it, and my main question was like, what is the reason for this? Because I didn't know. Yeah, I just didn't know. Because number one and number two, there was a story that was going somewhere. This one, has there been a third film?
Yeah, there was one in 2019.
And was that a continuation of number two?
No, that was a reboot.
Okay, but was it like the same feel as number one and two? Was it the same feel as number four?
It was quite different.
From all of it was different from all of the movies.
Yeah. So that it was tonally quite different from the Del Toro movies, and this is a different still.
Okay.
And this is the one that's closest to the comics by a wide margin.
Okay. So I think Harvey was right as well. If they had a bigger budget, there's a lot, because I enjoyed the serious tone Hellboy, and I enjoyed this was more religion based, and it kind of like the film was pretty much, the theme was temptation, right? And I think they executed that pretty good. Like, but sometimes they went a bit OD, because I thought there was just too many like scenes of what's real and what's not, and just I was like, okay, it's a bit too much, but still. But like I said, so there were things about this movie. That's why I felt a bit discombobulated, because I was enjoying some of the things that they were doing, but at the same time, it just felt weird. So I just feel so discombobulated watching this movie.
So I think I have a slightly different take on this than you guys do, because I am a big Hellboy fan, as evidenced by this. Like, this is the complete Hellboy story, and the reason I'm not showing you the BPRD books I've got on my shelf is because they're too heavy to lift. So I've been waiting for a long time for like a Hellboy story that really gets the character and really is a reflection of what the appeal of the comics is, right? Not because it has to be 100% faithful, but because I think that character is really cool. And while I like the Del Toro version quite a bit, it's not the same character, right? It's not quite the same thing. So I think this movie is by far the closest to the to that source material, and so it breaks my heart that this is such a bad movie. Right. So this is based on a short story. Like Hellboy has the main story that I just held up, and it's got like offshoots, right, where Hellboy just goes on an adventure, and the Crooked Man is one of those. And I reread it for this after I watched the movie, and the part actually having to do with the Crooked Man and the siege on the church and all of that is basically word for word the comic, and then they add in a whole bunch of stuff that I think really derails the movie. And also I think the movie is really poorly made. Like the director of this does not know what an establishing shot is, and the movie just starts and then it just finishes and then it just goes from scene to scene. Like it's really poorly made, and it was to the point where it was really disorienting. Like I thought like in the first 30 seconds I thought, is this for real? Like, do you not know how to start a movie? And then in between you have like little things where kind of it stylistically and tonally changes quite a bit. And I say all of this even though I think the story itself is great, and I think the Hellboy in this is great. Like I think his character design is not the greatest, but I think that's easy to fix. Just make him a bit less pale and a little bit chunkier, and you've got a pitch perfect Hellboy. And it breaks my heart that this guy will not get a sequel, or this version of Hellboy will not get a sequel because it just does not make enough money. Like there's nobody greenlighting a second one in this, when this could have been the start of, like, even if they just do the one shots and never touch the main story, that still would have been an amazing series of movies if done properly. And we're not going to get that because this movie is just such a train wreck in terms of just quality wise. Just as an anecdote, first of all, this has a very limited showings, right? It's not getting a US showing at all. And here in the UK, I had to travel quite far to find a theater that actually showed it. And then there were like 8 other people in the theater with me. And when the movie was over, one of them said, "That was all right, wasn't it?" And the other person said, "I'm not watching that again." And those were kind of the two reactions to it. And I was kind of in the middle. I can kind of see where both were coming from. So I think this is a deeply, deeply flawed movie that has a great Hellboy in it and has a great story in it. And in the good scenes are quite good, but there's not enough of them. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it for sure. Do you think a lot of because I know you mentioned like some of the technical stuff from the director, but do you feel like a lot of it kind of comes from you being a Hellboy fan and like knowing the comics as to why you kind of didn't take to it as sort of as much as we did?
No, I think it's just because the guy needs to look up what an establishing shot is.
Okay.
That's what it is. Like that first scene with the with the train driving through the hills of Appalachia, it just starts.
Yeah.
Like add 20 seconds of lead up to that, and it's a much better scene. And then the way it ends with the witch, like that's how the comic ends, but that's a comic. The comic is not the same thing as a movie, right? Mm. It's just too abrupt. It's too hectic. It's too disjointed. It feels like they didn't edit it, right? So, and I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just saying that's how it feels. But that's before we go into the story editions that are a slightly completely different topic as well. I just thought it's really poorly made in terms of just how the movie is made. Like it looks like a bad, like calling something like comparing something to a fan film is kind of a little bit unfair because there's some amazing fan films out there, but it's like this is like a fan film from somebody who really wants to make a movie and doesn't know how. Like that's how I would describe this movie, and that's really, really scathing for a professional filmmaker. I don't care about the budget. 20 million is not a lot of money, but it is enough. Especially this kind of movie where you basically put a guy in a Hellboy costume and have him walk through the woods for 2 hours. That's like, with the exception of a couple of scenes, and they actually added in some of the big CGI spectacle in the end that wasn't in the story, that didn't have to be there. They burdened the budget even more by doing that. Bad, it's just bad.
And I think you said it perfectly when you said it was hectic. It felt like a hectic movie. Like I did say, like I didn't think the movie was bad. It was just WTF throughout, because I didn't know how I felt about the movie, honestly, because some things that they were doing was good. And like I said, I enjoyed the serious tone, and I enjoyed that they kind of, they followed through with the whole, religion aspect to it. But It's just the way that was presented to us. It just felt, it was just weird, bro. I was just honest. I was, like I said, I was just watching this thinking, like, what is the purpose of this? Because I didn't know exactly, like, is this the end? Like, was it created by someone that was drunk? Was it created by someone that just didn't care, or they were like sacked halfway through, so then they just messed up? Like, I honestly didn't
We're
know
out
what
of
the hell was
budget. Movies over. Hit press print.
honestly, like, that's what I'm just so confused. Like, what do you think the reason for this movie was? Because I don't necessarily blame the director all the way, because it's like they hardly even marketed this film, so it's kind of like they set out for failure. So,
but that's different things to it, right? If this was this amazing hidden gem movie and it just died because it didn't get marketed, that would be then we would be having a different conversation, right? Like they didn't market it because they realized this is bombing, and.
But what did they use to determine that? Are they using just trade? Like, I'm not trying to get into the specific of things.
Well,
but...
I mean, like movie studios kind of look at what they have, and they look at test audiences, and they kind of see, okay, how far do we estimate this goes? And I think audience reactions are negative, are sufficiently negative that I think they just said just sell it to a streamer on a discount, recoup as much money as we can, but it's a loss.
To me, it seemed like a lot of the content within it as well, because I felt like they tried to go, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like they were like, you know, trying to be like kind of like true to the comics in terms of like how like fantastical it was kind of being. Which when I was watching it, I was a bit like, okay, to me, like that's why it made sense why it wasn't like mass marketed, because I was a bit like, I don't think like the average like movie going sort of like audience would maybe be into sort of some of like the weird stuff that was kind of like going on in this movie. And like you said, Jonathan, it was like there was like parts of it which was definitely how you said it, like you felt like discombobulated in terms of like what was going on in sort of in like the movie. I could like, you know, you could kind of definitely feel that, and you can kind of definitely feel that this wouldn't have had like, this didn't have the mass appeal to sort of like generate a sort of a fan base of people that don't truly know sort of the Hellboy and Hellboy comics, essentially.
Let me disagree right there, if
Go
that's okay. So I think this has all the ingredients to be a really successful thing, right? So one of the things that's in recent years that's been consistently making money as low budget horror, right? You make a movie for 8 to 10 million, and you make 20 or 25, and then you sell it to streamers, and that's a tidy profit. You do that a couple of times a year, right? That's a winning business model, right? This movie has more CGI in it, like specifically like the Hellboy character, right? Requires a larger budget and more production costs and that sort of thing. And the budget at 20 million is a little bit higher. So just using the really rough rule of thumb, you need to make 50 million for this to break even, which is more than these movies make. But it feels a lot like a low budget horror movie, right? Witchcraft in Appalachia is a very recognizable theme. It looks like actually one of the reactions the movie got when the first trailer came out, aside from being a really poor trailer, was that it looks like any other horror, like low budget horror movie about witches. And I think they should have leaned into that, saying it's that kind of movie, but also it's got Hellboy in it.
Would that be a good decision though? Because Hellboy started off with a high budget. The first 3 movies, I'm guessing the budget was very high. Yeah, so
but those were made 20 years ago, and those were different movies and different stories. But what I'm getting at is the movie, the story itself is really approachable. The audience knows Appalachia. The audience knows Christian folklore or mythology. The audience knows witch lore, and all you need to do is add in Hellboy. And Hellboy's whole thing is that he doesn't care about being special, right? Like, we get 2 lines in this movie that are straight out of the comic, which is, I met the devil and he doesn't look like you. And the other thing is a thing about Hellboy was found in a church in the 40s. And that's kind of what we get in terms of background. And that's all you need. You do not need to know anything else about him. This is not like the first Del Toro movie where we spend a lot of time about the Nazi occult ritual hiring Rasputin to open a portal to the chaos dimensions, to waking up in Elagod. Like, none of that is here. None of that is required for the story. Hellboy is just a guy, and he stumbles into this adventure. That's all you need to know. And then if this movie had worked, the next movie could have built on his background a little bit. But his whole character is that he doesn't care, and it's not important to who he is, like his origins. And at least not this. Like, there are some lines about how he's got this destiny that hasn't caught up with him yet, and he's kind of been in denial about it and all of that. But on a very basic level, this is a very simple story, and most of the pieces are well known to the audience. And the thing that's new is not really all that important, like who is Hellboy and where does he come from, right? He does not have any special powers. He doesn't have any special backgrounds, anything that are important to understand the story. So if you had kept this budget a little bit lower and had marketed as to Hellboy fans simultaneously as to fans of low-budget horror, I think that could have been much better. If the costume had looked a little bit better, if the first trailer had been a little bit better, if this movie would deserve better word of mouth, I think you could have had a sleeper hit on your hands, at least enough to get a sequel, and then you could have had like a series of cult classics.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I think I might have to disagree because someone who's not familiar with the comics, right? So I was just introduced to the movie, and I'm assuming a lot of other people were just introduced to the movie. We were introduced to a Hellboy where the universe was big, right? So kind of like sizing that down, kind of.
But that's the thing. That's the Hellboy comics. He walks into a situation and he starts messing with the big
but
evil.
that's the thing. But I understand that's Hellboy comics, so it kind of leads to my next question: is if they were being naive to think that okay, just because we're accurate to the comic books, can that kind of pretty much make up and save this film? Like not even save this film, make this film a great film. Like is just because something's accurate doesn't mean it's going to be good, right? And I think we've seen with this film that it was accurate, but it was a terrible movie. So
yeah, but I'm just saying they didn't have to water down Hellboy as a character in order to make an approachable story.
Yeah, I hear, and I understand as well. That's what I'm saying. Most of the stuff that you're saying, I agree with. Just the part that I didn't agree with was the whole like falling into the low budget movie and just kind of doing that. Because for me, I was introduced to Hellboy universe where it's massive, right? So it's like I think I don't know what argument this was, but
do you think this is just because you saw the other movies? Or like if this had been your first exposure to Hellboy, you would have said, okay, I'm on board.
No, 100%. That's what I said. But my exposure to Hellboy was from a universe like a Hellboy world, which was massive, right? But now it's being concised into the woods. So it's like,
right. You can't get over that. You can't just see.
It's not that. Well, I could get over it if it was a good movie. So if it was a good movie, like you know what I'm saying, I would get over it. But it wasn't a good movie. So it was like that just adds on to why the movie was bad for me because it just felt very small.
Yeah, but did you feel like confused by Hellboy himself? Like leave aside the movie and how it's made and all of that.
Yeah.
Did you get a feel for who Hellboy was and what he was about and what the story was about just based on what the movie presented to you? Or did you feel like you had to have read the comics in order to, like, did you feel like you were missing something because you hadn't read the comics?
I felt, it's interesting because I felt like this was definitely a different Hellboy from the movies that I've seen. So it felt like I was watching a new Hellboy. In terms of his story, it was a bit confusing. Wait, does Hellboy have Hellboy had a mum in this, right?
Well, we're going to get to that, but
okay, so that's why I was a bit confused. Like I was trying to I was just trying to get to grips that I'm watching a new Hellboy. This just felt like a new film to me. So yeah, so that's why I felt mixed about it because I was just getting used to watching this new Hellboy. So in terms of the story itself, it was a bit confusing, just purely based on the fact that it was completely different from the first two movies.
It's just a new continuity, right? If you watch two different versions of Batman, they're not the same. And they might be like one of them might be much bigger and the other one might be more grounded or whatever. Like that's just how franchises work. I
know, but with Batman, if we're using it still feels like a Batman movie though. Like they're still in the world of Gotham. This did not
feel like the same.
This that's what I'm saying. They're still in the world of Gotham. Batman. This one, he was in the woods. In comparison to Hellboy, he's the first three. It still feels like I haven't seen the first one, but I saw the trailers and it still felt like it was in.
It's like 8 different versions of Batman, and they're very different, tonally, stylized, scale-wise, power-wise.
Yeah, but you still feel like they're in Gotham though. This one didn't feel like he was in whatever city Hellboy's from, even though they're in the woods. It just didn't feel like it was part of the Hellboy universe. Just how I saw the movie. It just didn't feel like it was a Hellboy movie or was in the Hellboy universe. It just felt like a completely separate entity.
Are you saying that you feel like they could have just replaced Hellboy and made it like any other character and it wouldn't have changed anything? Like you're saying Hellboy himself didn't add anything special to the movie that we were watching?
Not necessarily. I think I enjoyed Hellboy and I enjoyed the whole witch concept of things, right? Because like I said, it follows the whole religion theme and all, and the temptation, all of that. So I enjoyed that. It just didn't feel like a Hellboy movie to me. It just didn't feel like a Hellboy movie to me because it was presented completely differently from what we usually what I've seen so far. And I get it, it's a continuity And it's like, same with Batman, it's different Batmans and, different styles and stuff. But with those Batman films, it still feels like a Batman movie. Like I even made the point with the Penguin. Like even though this is a Penguin movie, it doesn't feel like it's part of it feels like it's just another crime movie rather than part of the Batman universe. You know what I'm saying? So with this one, I was like, I call it Hellboy, but it just feels like, I don't know, it seems like it's some sort of multiverse.
Yeah, all I can say to that is that's what the comics are like. He goes to a place and he encounters something weird and he deals with it. Like that's a storyline where he deals with vampires in Venice and it's fine. People like the BPRD sending out agents across the world to deal with monsters and threats and mysteries is just what they do. Like they're not tied to a specific location in that sense. Okay, so but moving on from that, what about like the story itself? Right, so he wanders into this town, and you've got these people who have sold their souls to the devil in order to acquire power and turn themselves into witches. And the Crooked Man, they owe something to the Crooked Man, and he's coming to collect. And it's kind of this like one of the overarching themes of this is that flesh decays and sins remain. Right, like that. Even if like the mistakes of the past have a tendency to linger, and they do not go away just because time has passed. Right, and this comes up. This is reflected in pretty much every character in this, and it shows up in a couple of different ways. What are your thoughts on that?
I thought that was like the strongest parts of the movie, in terms of like the story wise, and sort of like Jonathan mentioned about sort of these people in sort of kind of like these like desperate situations and sort of like having that temptation of sort of overcoming sort of some of like the struggles, or like sort of being tempted with sort of something that they really want, but they're not really knowing the cost of sort of attaining that. And I felt like that's where for me the movie was at its sort of like its strongest. Like you said, it was like the not being able to like escape your past and stuff like that, and it led to like some like really kind of like cool sort of moments in there, especially with like the what was the guy, the like kind of like the sidekick dude, where even though he kind of like went off and like sort of like lived his life, went to the war and this that, and the other, the witch converted his dad to sort of a horse as like sort of kind of like punishment, and then he had to kind of like come back and like realize that and like be back to sort of like his initial mistake of sort of kind of like being trusting of the witches. So I felt like all of that was like super fascinating, super like really really well done in the movie.
Yeah, for me, I just liked how the theme of kind of like overcoming personal demons, and just like how it felt kind of similar to when, obviously if you're not Christian, but when Jesus was getting tempted by the devil in was it the jungle, the forest, or the woods, or something like that, right? So sorry,
the desert.
I believe, I think
he
so.
got
Yeah.
tempted on the cross.
No, there was
also in the gardens, right?
In the garden, yeah. Sorry, in the gardens. Yeah, in the garden. Sorry, that scene.
Gethsemane, is that the one, right, where the devil comes to him and says, "Hey, you can be king on earth.
Yeah,
all you
and
have
then
to do is give up all your principles."
Yeah, literally, there's just different forms of temptation, and that's literally what it felt like watching those, like just watching the movie, the Hellboy movie as a whole. It just felt like that. Yeah, it pretty much felt like that.
And then that kind of culminates in the siege on the church, right, where the witches and the Crooked Man cannot enter the church because it's consecrated ground, right? But then they try to kind of worm their way in anyway by promising the priest all sorts of things he might like, and then he keeps turning them down, and it's causing him anguish because on some level these are things he wants, but he's principled enough to turn them down and realize that these are tainted gifts and they will not actually be what they're promised, right? And so he says, so I've earned my years, and I've earned all my ailments, and I'm content with that, right? And so he's probably one of the noblest characters in that story, right? Because it would be very easy for him to give into that, right?
You know what? This also makes this movie kind of weird, because it's like Hellboy, it's kind of like a demon himself, a devil himself, so the devil being tempted. It was like, it's kind of weird. It was kind of weird watching, but
that's the whole thing of Hellboy, right? That he is a devil, and he does not care, and and all these monsters constantly try to kind of suggest to him that he should give into that, or he should give into his nature, or something like that, and he just does not care about prophecy, about destiny. Like that part is not as pronounced in this one.
That's what I was gonna ask. Sorry, that's what I was gonna ask, because I kind of got lost in the film as well. So he didn't really have a prophecy in this movie, did he?
So he does have this purpose, right? That he is the bringer of destruction in like in the End of Days, which is what we saw in the Del Toro version. And the Crooked Man at one point points this out to him, and Hellboy basically says, "Yeah, I'll deal with that later. I'll jump off that bridge when I get to it." Which is again this Hellboy, this core characteristic of Hellboy is that he does have this grand destiny and whatever else, and he just shrugs it off. Like he's here to help a guy bring his father to rest, right? And he does not care about being, the seed of destruction.
Do you think they should have kind of got close to that storyline though? Because I think in each storyline, like in each Hellboy that we've seen, minus the third one, because I haven't seen it, like we've seen like glimpses of, him like pretty much being hell on earth, but they haven't really gone into that story.
Yeah.
When we see prophecies, sorry.
No, I was gonna say for me, it didn't feel like it fit in this story, but at the same time, I don't feel like I liked what they did with his character in terms of like his like character development and like the story with his like mom and stuff like that. I wasn't like fully invested in what they were kind of like doing with that. Like, firstly, it was weird that he had like a human mum in the first place, because it like from what I know, and I don't know the comics or anything like that, but from what I know from watching the original movies, was that he's this like otherworldly being. Essentially, he's from like a whole like different dimension, and then like his mum being
from
hell, yeah. So like
the Hellboy.
Yeah, clues in the name. And then just to have like his mum in this like kind of like weird place and like being like set on fire, like all of that is kind of like part of where the story was like kind of like losing me. But at the same time, like him with like how grounded this was and like it being kind of like related to like this small town and this and the other, I don't think it completely would have fit for him to have been this world destroyer and him fulfilling some type of like prophecy in this particular movie. But I do feel like they could have built towards that if this had done well enough to sort of kind of like warrant second, third movies. I felt like they could have like maybe built towards that, because the direction they went with this one in terms of like making it a little bit more smaller and more grounded and more focused, I actually quite enjoyed, despite them like kind of like taking a misstep in terms of like his character, like his vested like interest in sort of kind of like what was going on in this particular small town.
Yeah, I think doing the whole prophecy thing again would just retread ground from what the Toro movies did, and I think they did that part well. And it also detracts from what's currently going on in this story and just makes the story bigger and eats up screen time. And also, it is acknowledged, right? He so it's basically kind of either foreshadowing it, or you could call it an Easter egg or something, where if there are sequels to this, then they can go into it, and then in retrospect, that comment from Hellboy about, yeah, I know I'm special, I deal with that when I get to it, like that might have then additional meaning. But if you don't have that background, then it doesn't hold up the story, right? So I think that decision by itself was the right one. The thing about the mother is one thing I want to get at, which is that is not in the comics, or not in that comic, and this is not the comic origin of where Hellboy comes from. I think it does tie into the theme where he is basically the sin that remains, right? Like that his mother made a deal with the devil and he's the product of it, and he's still around even if he never knew her and even he had no choice in it. And so there's evil in the world in some way because of what his mother did, and there's nothing he can do about it. And that is consistent with the idea of sin remains. I do think that there are if you've read the comic, there are a couple of key additions that eat up a lot of screen time in this, and that I think are just the worst part, and not just from a storytelling standpoint and from a runtime real estate standpoint, but also just in terms of movie making. So one of them is the whole thing about Hellboy's mother, right? Where the Crooked Man confronts him with this thing he's been running away from that introduces something new that I don't think does very much. I don't think it takes him to an interesting character place, and I don't think it furthers the story along. I think there could have been just some kind of temptation or doubt or something that the Crooked Man could have tapped into and messed with Hellboy. They didn't have to invent this, especially since so much of the runtime is actually devoted to that. Other things they invented was everything about Bobby Joe. She's a new character, which could be okay. It's just I don't think she does anything interesting. And maybe that character could become more interesting in later movies, but she has this flashback and this fear about this memory centered on her memory of losing her father as a young child, right? Mm-hmm. Did that make any sense to you?
None at all. And then I think it was like her mother being like dragged away as well at the same time. It was like as like a father dying, or something like that.
I think that was just their grieving, and somebody removes them so that
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So like in terms of like where it was placed in the movie, like it made sense because I think the witch said something about like, to like make the incantations like stronger, you have to like kind of like tap into your like your sadness and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
in terms of like its like context for the character itself, it didn't really make sense. It didn't kind of like add anything to like what we knew about her, or like sort of it didn't like give us a new kind of like perspective on the character at all. So when I saw it, it was a bit confusing. I didn't understand why that was the choice that they'd kind of gone for when they
Yeah.
hadn't set up anything like that about her character up until that point, unless I missed anything on that.
I don't think you did. I don't think it makes any kind of sense. And so I don't think it takes her to an interesting place, and I don't think it tells us anything interesting about her, other than just she has some kind of grief or regret that the crooked man can tap into, or like the witches can tap into. But like none of it makes any kind of sense. So what it seems to be is that her father died from some illness when she was very young, so 20 years ago, right? When she's in her late 20s now, she was 7 or 8 when it happened 20 years ago. Just who exactly is traumatized by that to the point where they carry that with them 20 years later? Like, I know, yes, I understand grief, but like this is the kind of thing that you get over eventually, right? Like even if it happens like in a tragic circumstances or something, but all that it seems to be is that the father died from some illness, and she seems to still carry that with her 20 years later, and it's not clear why that is a sin. First of all, the theme here is that sin remains, right? So why is this a sin, and why did it remain? And also, why did she pray in German?
I didn't realize she played in German.
Yeah, she played in German, and I looked it up, and that's because the actress speaks German. Like I looked up her biography. Just I wanted to know, like, did they come from the actress? Did it come from the director? Like, why? Because it makes seem to make no sense. And the prayer is something about I've forgotten the details now, but like dream until morning comes or something like that. So just try to push through the darkness is the gist of what she's saying, and it seems to be some kind of prayer. It doesn't seem to be a Christian prayer. It seems to be some kind of affirmation that she just says. It's not clear why she's saying it in German. And it kind of, first of all, I appreciated that it was real German, because almost no German spoken in American movies is real German. It's almost all gibberish. So that's small number of points. But like it just introduced more questions, right? Like why? Like especially the historical context. Like they try a little bit to make it matter that it's the 50s and she's Asian, right? But it matters in exactly one line. And after that, it doesn't. And then they introduce the fact that she prays in German. Why? So all of that could have interesting answers, or it doesn't have to be the most profound thing. But there's nothing there at all. So it's just question marks, and it doesn't seem to add up to anything. It doesn't even suggest anything. Like to me, the pieces are completely at odds with another and just don't add up to anything.
I think her entire character is like that as well. I don't think there was really much about her character which made sense. Even the whole like relationship dynamic between like her and Hellboy kind of came out of left field for me. It didn't seem like that was like being set up as like them having some type of like connection at all in this movie. So I feel like they could have just kept her simple in terms of like her sort of being a researcher that's gone into the field and has like a vested interest in sort of like these like witches for whatever reason. And again, it could be like to do with like sort of some type of temptation or like something that like happened in her past. And then you kind of saw that I don't know whether it was like that she gave in that she was like kind of like seeing the reverend at the end because like she'd kind of like given in or whatever. But I feel like they could have just like kept her story a little bit more focused on that as opposed to sort of I don't know what like trying to add all these like different aspects which didn't really like mean anything. Like they could have added like more stuff or like contextualized it a lot better to kind of like fit within her story of like exploring and having like a bit of a deeper understanding of like witches and sort of incantations and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with a character who has all sorts of academic knowledge, and then wants to get hands-on experience and gets into trouble because of that. It's just that this character does not go anywhere interesting because of that, and then also, and she also does it in the most basic and weird way, right? She just asks Cora how magic works, right? Not like just like fundamentally, like how does it work? And she has to be told the most basic things about it. But she's been studying this all her life apparently, And it's not even about, it's not just like it's in the books, like it actually you like a piece of your soul goes missing when you use magic, something that doesn't come through academic study. But she just outright does not know what magic is and how it works. Why is that interesting? Why is that an interesting dynamic? Like this whole idea of theory colliding with practice, it could be interesting. And I'm on board with that character being a bit basic in this version and then gets more interesting in later versions. Like there's nothing wrong at all about that character, I think. It's just when we get to the parts where she supposedly has this deep-seated trauma that simply does not add up.
Mm-hmm. She wasn't in the comics, was she?
No, new character. Which is an opportunity, right? Like just add, like you could add to the world this way. It just that even the pieces that are kind of promising don't quite pan out, I don't think.
So is the comics weighty enough for you to follow it just pretty much accurately without adding the new characters or the new, added story lines?
So the stuff that's not Hellboy's mother or anything related to Bobby or the Bobby Joe or the demon spider. The demon spider also is not in the comics. Mm-hmm. Those three things, take those out, and then what remains of the movie is essentially a word-for-word recreation of the comic. Okay. And those are the good parts. It's the funny thing.
Mm-hmm. So how would you say this film compares to the other Hellboys? Even though you said it was the worst movie, like in terms of the story itself, right? How would you say that compares to the other Hellboys? So not how it was presented, but just the story itself.
I think the story's great because it's adapting a great story.
So you say it's pretty much the best story out of all the Hellboys that we've seen?
I still like the first Hellboy, but I think this version of Hellboy is my favorite. And I think the parts of this that work really work. And if it hadn't been for the broken parts, this would have been the best Hellboy. With those parts, I'm not sure where to exactly file it in. It's definitely better than 2019. If I had to watch one or the other, I definitely would watch this one. But I don't know, the original 2004, I think, version simply has a charm to it, and it's a better movie overall by a wide margin. I think this is a great story told incredibly poorly.
I would say I actually think I enjoyed this one a little bit more. Just with how like weird and wonderful it was, kind of like getting in like the witches aspect of it, and like some of like the visuals as well. Like when, like a really weird one was like when that witch was like kind of like being suspended in the air, and she had like that snake kind of like going in and out of her, like back and forth consistently. I was like, it was just like stuff like that, which
I think there's a whole bunch of cool stuff in there. Like when Cora re-enters her skin, that's a great sequence.
Yeah, that was good.
Everything to do with like that scene where Cora kind of gets possessed by the witches and the snake is just on this infinite loop. That's a great image. Doesn't add up to very much, doesn't mean very much, but it's a great image. Where she's suspended in midair and the snake kind of goes in and out. Yeah. That's a wonderful, that's like a trailer shot.
Yeah.
And in the comics, she basically says, "Oh, I can't go any further because we are in witch country now, and I can't go." And then so she remains behind. Which I think just simply makes more sense on a story and character level, but it's a cool image, and I don't know how I feel about that. Just like my view is, if you're gonna do something like this, make it fit in the story, and I don't think it really does. But okay, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff here, like even just the setting of Appalachia, like the way witchcraft is kind of woven into people's lives, and they're just a fact of life for them. Like all of that works, all of that is great. Yeah. But that's because it doesn't come from this movie. It comes from somewhere else.
What about the witch that was like antagonizing them? Like I thought she was great anytime. Like she was. Is that from the comics as well, or is that?
Yeah,
that's from the comics. Okay, yeah. No, because she was just like fun. Anytime she was like on screen, she was just like fun, and I did like just like some like brightness.
Sort of shot her when she was on the horse. Great Hellboy line.
Yeah.
He says at one point, like when she keeps going on monologuing in the tree, he says, "I should have shot her while she was on the horse."
And it's movie, I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, like it's one line. It's very quickly. Also, one thing actually they added that I liked was that when he hears the call of the witches, and he says to Bobby Joe, "The hills are calling to evil," and I know because I heard it too.
Oh, that was good one.
That's a wonderful Hellboy line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
like that he hears the call to evil and he knows what it means, but it bounces off him because he's never going to act on it. Also great, and that is something new they added, and I think that really works. I think that almost makes the inclusion of the demon spider worth it, Because like in the comics, there's just reports of witches and Hellboy gets sent to investigate, and that's it. And that's why he's there. And that's why he's talking to people. And here, adding in the whole thing about the demon spider and the train crash and just wandering into people's lives and starting to mess with them does not really work, I don't think. And they kind of have to add additional hoops to jump through just because they created this hook, which adds nothing. Just have him walk into town and say, I hear there's witches around, let me help. That's all you need. That's the start of the story. But for some reason, I didn't think that it was good enough.
Also, that whatever woman that he was on the train with should have died.
She probably should not have survived.
Yeah, most likely. But she came out without a scratch. I was like, okay.
There was a scratch.
Yeah.
Was there anything in the film that surprised you guys? So it could be something which you didn't think they'd do in like the whole Hellboy franchise. So it could be like a positive thing, or it could be something that kind of pretty much.
There was nothing where I said, "Oh, I didn't think you could take a Hellboy movie there." Like that's because it's that close, and the stuff where that, like I said earlier, that they add to it are the weakest parts that don't quite work and muddle up the themes and all of that. Also, this theme of this theme of sin remains is kind of implied but not outright stated in the original, and so making that a little bit more explicit, I think, works. But I don't think that quite qualifies as what you're talking about. So I don't think there were any big surprises. I just appreciate a bunch of the visuals, and it's more about I'm glad they didn't water it down. Like, so for instance, Cora re-entering her skin. Like the movie really rejoices in making that visceral and hearing the bones crack and stuff like that, right? So I'm glad that they kept stuff like that in there and also really like amplified it. I think I'm not sure what this movie is rated, but the fact that it's not as plastic as the Del Toro version, and this is just much grittier and down to earth, I think really enhances the movie. And I think the idea of doing that story on a lower budget just to kind of build up the goodwill for a bigger franchise, I think was the right choice, and they just fumbled the ball entirely.
Pick the wrong director, would you say?
Yeah, I don't think the director has done anything great. Like a bunch of stuff that you would kind of associate with movies of this quality. Like it's just such a shame. For me, the number one takeaway is that I cannot recommend this movie because the flawed pieces are too big and too flawed. And it means we won't get another take at this for 10 years, right? There's no way that in 3, 4, 5 years somebody says, okay, let's try again. Because
you don't think that this is the end? So you think that?
Well, there's no way there's a sequel. Like this flop is so complete. Like at the time of recording, it's made not just under $900,000 on a $20 million budget. That's after the initial week. It's not getting a US release unless this becomes a cult classic in like pay-per-view streaming, whatever it's called. Like this is dead on arrival, and this is just damage mitigation. Like this is not a cult classic. This is not good enough, and it's not bad enough to be a cult classic.
Yeah. It's a shame because I feel like there was strong potential in this, and I feel like Jack Kesy as Hellboy deserved another kind of like go.
He's great.
He's like fantastic in this. Like
one of the tragedies in this is that he doesn't get to play Hellboy again.
Exactly.
Like I'm sure other like because if they try again, it's not gonna be with him. And unless some executive really like understands that he was the best part of this, and if you put him in a better movie, you get a better Hellboy, and that's the winning recipe. I think that's obvious. But that's not how movie studios work. Typically, they say, well, this didn't work, so start again. Right? And that means swapping out the lead actor, no matter how good they were. I think this take on Hellboy is exactly what it should be. All you need to do is make the costume a little bit brighter. And like the fact that he looks so pale, I think is 90% of the problem. It should be bright red.
Yeah.
And that's especially in this setting, where everything is so bleak and gray and washed out. He should stand out not just because of what he looks like, but also because of the color.
You think they did that to try and kind of like fall in line with his character? Because obviously it seemed like a more...
But in the comics, it's exactly like that. Like he's bright red. And he's specifically in this comic, he's like the only bit of color in the entire comic book, pretty much. Everything is gray and black and brown and white. And he's just the one speck of color. And that just emphasizes how much he doesn't belong there and how much he stands out. And it baffles me that they did not do this. I guess they were afraid of being too close to Ron Perlman Hellboy, and 2 they thought like somebody would look at this and say, Like, this looks so goofy in this low-budget horror movie. I can see somebody saying that, and I think they just gambled on the audience reaction and just gambled wrong.
I personally thought they did it because to kind of like match the environment and the state of Hellboy, because he seemed like a more. Yeah.
But that's kind of the point, that he doesn't reflect.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that's the creative decision that they.
But that also means they don't understand that.
Yeah.
And that is like especially after the like. You can go back to earlier videos where we talked about the trailer to this, and I said back then you can still color correct Hellboy, like before you release it, like the day before the premiere, you can just still color correct him. No, not that hard, not that expensive, and they still didn't do it. But if they had done it, I think it would come across as better. I think it would still fail at the parts that are just outright weird and broken.
Yeah.
But it still at least would have looked better.
Look, he feels like the end, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating, right? Because this is one of those franchises. Like, if you can imagine a world in which this does well, right? Let's say it makes 40 million, and then it attracts a following on streaming, and it keeps making money over time. And then they do the other one-shot stories, and then over time that grows into the main storyline in the comics, and maybe there's a streaming offshoot series that follows the BPID, and then we get the Frog War and the Eldritch Apocalypse and the Black Flame and all of these things that appear in the comics. It's like there's a world in which that works, right? And all they had to do was not screw this up, and the things that screwed it up was the things they added in on top, right? So especially like the tragic flashbacks and tragic character histories. I really don't understand, like some, like, especially because the Hellboy creator was involved with this, and like people can make bad calls, right? Like, maybe he's not a great movie maker, whatever. Maybe he makes great comics and terrible movies or something. It's all possible. But like why was he not the voice of reason to say, look, this is why that doesn't belong here on a story level? And I don't understand why that didn't happen, because it's not like this is not like an adaptation where the original author just gets completely shut out completely and people go crazy in their own direction, whatever. Like, this is not one of those, right? This is very firmly made with Mike Mignola's input, right?
Yeah.
So this is his mistake on some level.
Like making Hellboy's mother human. Seemed
like, yeah, like he has this cool, like he has this great background story that, yes, the Hellboy, like the Del Toro movies already did that well, so he can't go there again, at least not for a while. But like, that's a great background, and even gets referenced. Like, what's this whole thing about being found in a church when he's the product of a deal with the devil? Like, what? Like, how does that even make sense? Did his mother drop him off in a church? But then why did she do it pretty much in the way it happens in the canonical origin? It's just all question marks.
Yeah.
And none of it adds up to, oh, I see what they were doing and they missed a little bit, but they tried. No, like the whole thing is baffling. But in between, I think in there somewhere is a great movie. A great Hellboy movie too.
I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough. Not enough to like go watch it again, but I enjoyed it enough to kind of like appreciate what it was. But I can definitely understand the frustrations of loving something so much and like wanting it to be a success and wanting it to kind of like explode and everyone else love it, and then just kind of seeing the flaws behind it, and like, again, like, see, especially when you're saying it's like stuff that they've added in, where it's like, if you just kind of like just make a faithful adaptation, as we've seen with things like The Last of Us and stuff like that, is that it works, it just works, and you don't need to sort of add the different like flavors towards it, because it's already worked initially, and you just need to just create a faithful enough adaptation. If you're going to add stuff to it, make it make sense, and make it make sense in the world that you're sort of like that sort of already exists.
And I'm totally on board with an adaptation making changes, but if every change you make makes it worse, then I have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not small things, right? Like the entire, like I've never walked out of a movie, but I was this close to walking out of this one, and I didn't because we were going to talk about it. But like the whole last 20 minutes is just like this trippy vision quest between Hellboy and Bobby Joe. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it makes any sense. I don't think it really says anything. I don't think it makes the story better. Like, this whole thing is about people owning up to their past mistakes, right? And what do their visions have to do with it? Like, I like this whole idea that the witches kind of poke into your soul and they find your sins and they find your regrets, and that's how they get you. That's cool. But that's not what they're doing there. right? They're just adding some weird quasi dream sequences that are just weird. Not in a good way, not in a artsy way, just in a way of like, what does this mean? Like, I'm not even sure this means anything.
But I feel your frustrations, Daniel. I feel it.
Yeah.
I feel it.
So I'm guessing it's time for last thoughts. Or is there anything else anyone wants to bring up? Oh, last thoughts and ratings.
A movie that I enjoyed, had potential to be a lot better if it had a bigger budget and maybe could have like tidied up a few things around something like the script and stuff. But overall, I enjoyed it enough. I think I'll keep it simple. Like I'll give it like I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Like I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it more than I didn't enjoy it. And it had like enough like cool visuals in there for me, and it creeped me out enough in there as well. And definitely made me want to go and read the Bible after watching that. So it did its job on that part. So I enjoyed it enough.
For me, Hellboy as a franchise, it's always been a cool franchise to me. It hasn't been like one of the best franchises for me, but it's been a cool franchise. Like it's been like popcorn movies for me where I've had a good time. This was a movie which I found very confusing because I didn't know how to kind of like explain my experience with it. It's like I appreciated and I enjoyed that they took risks from someone that hasn't read the comic books. So I enjoyed that they took, I see it as risk because obviously, you know, the Hellboy that I was introduced to was pretty much different from this. So I enjoyed that they went serious tone with it and they did the whole like religious theme. But at the same time, it just felt like Daniel mentioned the word hectic. Like it felt like a hectic movie where it just made me feel discombobulated, and I haven't felt this discombobulated, to a movie in a very long time. So I can't really explain my experience with this film. I don't know if like I enjoyed it or if I just had a bad time. So I'd say it's split in the middle, but I wouldn't call it I'd say it's an average film actually. I'd say average. So I'd give it a 5 out of 10. I think that's because it wasn't a bad movie. It wasn't good. I'd say 5 out of 10. Average experience. Confusing experience, but average experience.
One more thing, because you mentioned hectic. What I hated what they did was that whole like shaky cam stuff that they were doing when they were on the train and when they were on the helicopter. It was just, it just like grinded my gears when I was like watching it in the cinema. I was like, what the hell is this? Like,
That's literally, this movie is a WTF. It felt like a WTF 1 hour 40-minute moment.
Daniel.
So to sum up, there are large chunks of this movie I really liked. I liked the version of Hellboy. I like the stuff that's the actual story. I think is great. And I personally like I've been going back and forth over this for days whether or not to actually recommend this movie or whether this has actually rewatch value. And for me, I don't think it does. And the main thing is that not only do the bad parts take up too much time, they are also the ending. And if you just skip those or cut those out, then you have an incomplete movie that simply does not have a conclusion, really. And so I think like this is just a really good idea that had so much potential, but potential is cheap. What counts in the end is the quality of the final product, and the final product is no good. I think it's really poorly made from a like large chunk, like not all of it, but large chunks of it, especially the beginning and the end, looks amateurish. And then in between, there's some stuff where I said, okay, this is not a good shot. That's not how you should do that shot. You could have done this so much better. But then there's other stuff that's really cool. Like everything to do with the siege and the church, I think is wonderful, pretty much. A lot of the stuff having to do with Hellboy and Tom interacting, also great. The design of everything, the Crooked Man himself was great. We didn't really talk much about him, but I think he's a great character. So this is like a 5 out of 9 for me, mostly because I think the flaws it's like if there's a hair in your soup, at some point it's a ruined soup, no matter how good the other parts are, right? So, and this one has just a giant witch ball in the soup, and that's kind of what it comes down to. So I think this is a ruined movie, and I want somebody to try again, and I'm hoping for some kind of miracle where they just make a sequel anyway. Maybe they've already planned one, maybe they're already in production, whatever. I don't think that's going to happen, but just this version of Hellboy in a better movie could be something great. And I hope we get that, but I'm not holding my breath.
Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's discussion. Have they?
Yes, let us know your thoughts down below. Was this your favorite iteration of Hellboy in film adaptation, or was this one big miss for you as well? Let us know your thoughts down below, and of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hi guys, thank you very much for tuning into this week's discussion. We will see you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye bye.